Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's Top 50 Favorite Movies, number 10. This video is a part of a series of videos where I count down my top 50 favorite movies of my lifetime. I have now reached the top 10, where I will make one video for each film in my top 10 so that I can give a more detailed and in-depth review of each film. This video is for my number 10 favorite movies, so for all of these videos for my top 10, I'll be doing two sections, a non-spoilery section and a spoilers section. In my previous top 50 videos, I avoided spoilers altogether, but I feel in order to completely dissect the film and go into depth, I'll need to talk about spoilers. However, I will begin each video with a non-spoilery section for everyone who has not seen this movie, regardless of how old the movie is. So it will be safe up to a point, but then I'll give a warning when I'm about to get into the spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, you can turn it off then until such a time as you do. So on to my number 10 favorite movie, and the first rule about this movie is you're not supposed to talk about it. And the second rule is, well, that's right, I'm talking about Fight Club. I first saw Fight Club in the movie theaters when it was first released in late 1999, and I'm one of the few people who can say that because this movie bombed at the box office, and it would later acclaim cult status after it was released on DVD. However, I knew when I first saw this movie that it would become well liked and have a huge following because I knew that it was something special. So I didn't let the fact that it bombed bother me at all, because I knew that in its nature it would be appealing. It would not be appealing to mainstream audiences, but would win success as a cult classic. But overall, I didn't care if anyone else liked it. I loved this film. When I first went into this film, all I knew that it was done by the same director who did Seven, one of my favorite films, and it starred two of my favorite actors, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. I had to talk my wife at the time into seeing this film, as she thought it was just going to be a senseless action movie, but thankfully I managed to talk her into it because she loved this film just as much as I did, as this was not at all a senseless action movie. I thought it might be good, but I was completely unprepared for how good it actually was. From the start, it establishes itself as a unique and complicated film, as it follows Edward Norton's character, who is never named in the film, whom I will refer to as the narrator, since he narrates the film. And we see the film through his eyes, which is actually a very important element to the film. So the first 45 minutes or so of the film follows him as he battles with insomnia and attends support groups, meetings for people with diseases that he doesn't have in order to cure his insomnia. Which is a really bizarre concept, but the way it's pulled off makes it so fascinating and absurd at the same time. It sucked me in from the start. And of course, it was nothing what you would expect from a movie called Fight Club, because again, some people's expectations is it would be needlessly violent action film, which it wasn't. However, some people thought it was, which is why I now feel the need to go on a rant about something that's always irritated me. When I was in high school, this teacher whose opinion I respected and would often talk about movies and stuff, and he once told me the only reason I liked certain films were because they were violent. And he was referring specifically to Tarantino movies like Reservoir Dogs, which I'd recommended to him, and Pulp Fiction. And he also didn't like Braveheart because he said it was too needlessly violent. And here's the thing which I think he and people like him don't get. I didn't like these films because they were violent. It's better to explain it as I didn't let the fact that they were violent interfere with my enjoyment of these films. People like him obviously did let the violence interfere with the quality of the film that was actually there. And so they let the violence override all other factors on which make this film great. I say this now because it's very relevant to Fight Club, as I heard many other people say, "Oh, I didn't like the film, it's too violent. Why do you like violence so much?" Which irritates me, because if all I liked was violence, then I'd watch Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jackie Chan, or Michael Bay movies. And if you can't tell the difference between a Michael Bay film and a Quentin Tarantino film, then there's something seriously wrong with you. I don't like these films because they're violent. I simply don't let the fact that they are violent blind me to the fact that these are excellent, well-executed works of art. And this really applies to Fight Club, which doesn't even get violent until like 45 minutes into the movie. If you think this film is all about violence, then you must have the same short-term memory problems as the guy from Memento to not remember the first 45 minutes of this film. Anyway, now I got that all out of my system. One of the characters we were introduced to in these opening scenes is Marla Singer, played amazingly by Helen Bonham Carter. This character is so crazy, so weird and witty. She's just fascinating to watch. I seriously can't take my eyes off her as she says and does the most fucked up things. Anyway, all this plays fantastically with David Fincher's fast-paced style of directing and use of techno music. We are introduced to Tyler Durden, played by Brad Pitt, another messed up character who does and says things whatever, does and says whatever he wants. And we follow the narrator as his new friendship with Tyler takes him into a bizarre journey which would lead to strange anti-capitalist cults with bizarre discoveries. So that's the next thing I want to touch on, was the anti-capitalist themes in this film, which would probably be better described as anti-materialism, which is another thing that really drew me to this film, as it's the message I can totally get behind. I mean, the excellent acting, directing, character development, that drew me in, but when they started throwing in anti-materialism messages on top of that, well, that's completely won me over. I once got into an argument with someone online claiming it didn't have anti-capitalist messages any more than it advocated for people blowing up buildings, which I think is not very strong reasoning. Of course the movie didn't advocate blowing up buildings just because people in the film do it, but the anti-materialism is the heart of this character's journey, and these messages are so prevalent throughout the film. I have to say, yes, this film does advocate for that. And furthermore, it does it quite well. However, I will admit that you do have to suspend disbelief for this film, as many of the things that happen are quite implausible. Some of the way the characters act are a bit unrealistic, particularly regarding the cult Tyler Durden builds and how widespread and obedient these people are. But I think it works best if you see it more as a satire, commenting on society rather than something in the realm of realism. But that leads me to the only criticism I have about this film. The other comment it makes on society I don't agree with, and that is that society is too feminine, as these men have to resort to a fight club in order to express their masculinity. I strongly feel this film is confusing corporatism for feminism, and if they are if they examine corporate society more closely, they'd see it's actually very masculine based. The best criticism I heard from this was in the Honest trailer for this on YouTube, where the trailer voice guy said something like, Fight Club is the only place where modern men can release their violent urges, except for, and then he goes on to list a huge slew of things like war, video games, boxing, sports, so on and so forth, which I think is completely spot on. I don't want to get too much into this, but just to reinforce that it's a major flaw in this film that sort of hampers my enjoyment of it a little bit, but not too much, as I obviously love this film. Okay, so now it's spoiler time. So if you have yet to see this film, you should probably stop watching this video here, come back at such a time as you do see this film, and thanks a lot for watching. But if you have seen it, then please continue onward. I will get on to some spoilers. So this movie came out in 1999, the same year as The Sixth Sense, which you know, at the time I thought was a massively overrated film. And, you know, I still think that now, but I even thought that back then. And this one, Fight Club, was completely underrated. And the reason why I compare them specifically is because they both feature an unexpected twist. And personally, I think Fight Club's twist is better. Because first off, all The Sixth Sense is the twist. Without the twist, it's just a boring ghost movie. And Fight Club doesn't even need the twist to make this movie awesome. But the fact is, that it has it makes it even better. I remember getting into an argument with someone about this who said that, well, at least the Sixth Sense twist ending fit. But the Fight Club ending didn't really fit because there were times that both Tyler and the narrator would be talking to a group of people who seemed to be talking to both of them, such as the scene where Tyler and the narrator were in the car having an argument with a couple of Project Mayhem lackeys in the back seat, or scenes where Tyler and the narrator seemed to be in separate places, such as the narrator was in the bathroom or the basement listening to Tyler have sex with Marla. But personally, I think all these discrepancies are explained by what I said earlier, that this film is showing the narrator's perspective. Because he thinks Tyler is a separate person, that's how he views the world, and his perceptions change to keep this reality. For example, since he's blocking out the fact that he's having sex with Marla, he imagines it as if he's somewhere else listening to Marla and Tyler have sex, when really he's just retreating into his mind. And as for the Project Mayhem lackeys, nothing they say or do contradicts that the narrator is simply talking to himself, because all they say is, "First rule Project Mayhem is we do not ask questions." In fact, their behavior is explained by the fact that it's basically just one guy talking to himself, because their reaction is like, what the fuck is he doing? Which leads me to my next point, that this film sets up this twist ending much more than The Sixth Sense. There are meanings to things that make a lot more sense once you realize it's just one guy. For example, when Tyler first fights the narrator at the bar, these two guys come out and laugh at them, and he's just like, "Good evening, fellas." And at first, it doesn't make sense that the reaction of two guys beating each other up would be to laugh at them. Except if it's just one guy beating himself up, then it makes sense. I mean, there are tons of hints, such as little flashes of Tyler throughout the beginning narration, and the narrator saying he was reminded of his first fight with Tyler when he was beating himself up. And all of his conversations with Marla after she was having sex with Tyler makes total sense when you look at it in the context that she was actually sleeping with the narrator. And on and on and on. This movie sets up the surprise ending so beautifully. I think it's far superior to The Sixth Sense. But more than the ending, it was just so unbelievably awesome. I mean, the narrator goes on this big quest to stop Tyler from blowing up the buildings, and he gets all caught up and distracted from his inner fightings with himself, basically, and then he shoots himself and Marla shows up, and you kind of forget about the buildings until they blow up all of a sudden, and the Pixies start playing, and the narrator's just holding hands with Marla, watching these credit card buildings explode around them, knowing that Tyler's plan to create total chaos worked, but at the same time the narrator manages to overcome Tyler, and he just turns to Marla and says, "You met me at a strange time in my life." That was just an amazing ending. It was one of the best endings to any movie out there, in my opinion. The first time I saw that, I was in complete and utter state of euphoria. I'd never seen anything like this before in any movie. It was just so good. So overall, Fight Club is a fantastic film that builds a very interesting and believable character with a bunch of bizarre and quirky supporting characters, one of which turns out to be a voice in the main character's head. And has smart filmmaking with punchy music to create a suspenseful story with a surprising twist and an amazing final scene, which is why Fight Club is my 10th favorite movie of my lifetime. So that's it for my top 50 movies, number 10. I'll post links in the description below for the other videos in my top 50 movies, but make sure you subscribe to keep up with my future videos, and thanks a lot for watching.